OSU's coordinator for national and global scholarships advising. Nice to meet you.
Excellent. So before we jump into personal statements, I just want to talk a little bit about your office in case there's some of you that are not familiar with who we are. As you can see on this screen, we essentially support all OSU students, whether you be undergraduate, graduate, or alumni, as you're applying to one of a select portfolio of nationally competitive scholarships. We're happy to provide advising throughout the entire process. So Leanne, if you head to the next slide. Thank you. You might be asking yourself, what are nationally competitive scholarships based on our title of the office? These are competitive scholarships generally. They're all external, which means they're not OSU internal scholarships. You're not going to find them on Scholar Dollars, but rather they're national and international scholarships and fellowships. They're often associated with a private foundation or a government program. These are scholarships that are open to, depending on the scholarship, undergraduate students, graduate students, and alumni. And although we are located within the Honors College, we do serve all students. So you do not need to be only an Honors College student in order to work with us. We're happy to work with all students, eCampus including. And then finally, we're not a financial aid office. And so if your goal is to really find funding for next term, for example, we might not be the best office to go through. Often, as you're going to see through the personal statement workshop, the scholarships that we work with are a little bit longer term, and they might involve applying for several months, waiting to hear back, and then you might get your funding for the following academic year, for example. All right, thank you. We work with, like I mentioned, about a portfolio of 15 or so scholarships. Here's a couple of the ones that are most commonly applied to. Fulbright is a scholarship/fellowship that provides funding for grants of about 10 months to either teach English abroad, to do an independently conducted research project, or to study at the graduate level. The Boren Awards and Critical Language Scholarship are both for study abroad as well, with a focus on language learning. Gilman is also an undergraduate study for scholarship for studying abroad. Marshall is an example of several scholarships that we work with that are for graduate funding abroad. Marshall is specifically in the UK. And then we also work with a couple scholarships that are for undergraduate students, in which are domestic and involved in funding your education. So UDAL is for students who are interested in environmental issues or issues associated with healthcare or public policy amongst Indigenous communities, and Barry Goldwater Scholarship is for STEM students. So that's just a brief look at some of the opportunities that you can get involved with through our office. In terms of what we do, we are a small office that does a lot of different things. And so we are happy to meet with new students, get to know you a little bit, ask you a bunch of questions, figure out what your interests are, what your goals are. And then we can go about matching you with potential internships or with scholarships that might be of interest to you. Once you've decided to apply to a scholarship or a fellowship, we're happy to work with you as much as you want in terms of providing feedback on essays, giving recommendations for who might be a good reference writer, providing guidance and answering questions. If there's a interview process within your application, we're happy to do mock interviews. We also coordinate selection committees and interview committees as well. And then finally, we provide a whole lot of resources on our website, which I put the link up there, and then also our Instagram, which, Leanne, if you go to the next slide, that Instagram is a really helpful resource that we have for students and for the general OSU community. It has a lot of scholar profiles, it has tips and information, upcoming deadlines, etc. So I encourage you all to follow that if you think it would be of interest to you. That's scholarshipsadvising_OSU. All right, so that was just a little bit about your office. Our office, we want to make sure that you're familiar and are feeling welcome. Reach out to us if you've not done so already. All right, so personal statements. As I mentioned, I'm intimately familiar with the process of writing one of these. I personally had a really positive experience applying to Fulbright, and I was involved with my own Fulbright program advisor or fellowship advisor at my institution, working on my own personal statement for a really kind of extended period of time. And so I'm excited to talk about it today and what that process can look like. So essentially at its core, what a personal statement is a short 1 to 2 page document that's going to answer a couple key questions. And this will depend on the specifics on the scholarship that you're applying to and if they ask for any specific information, but generally includes information relating to who are you, who do you want to be, what do you believe, what problems do you want to solve, what contributions do you want to make within your field of study, within your career. Why does it make sense for you to be pursuing this scholarship or fellowship? Why should they choose you? So it really comes down to kind of the typical interview question of tell me something about yourself within a really short and concise format, right? It's also intended to reveal who you are and what you care about, what you intend to do. It's a really short document, and so you're going to have to make some intentional decisions about what to share. And so that's going to be revealing of who you are. And then finally, it needs to be compelling. People should get really drawn into your story that you're telling. It needs to be concise since it's so short, and it needs to be focused so that it's coherent and doesn't wander between a bunch of different topics. To provide a couple metaphorical examples, a personal statement is also, in my mind, kind of this picture or a snapshot. And so since it is so short and focused, it needs to provide a kind of a coherent look at who you are as a person or as a student, as a potential scholarship winner. And so what the committee or the reader should come away from this is with a kind of a clear understanding of a look at who you are. It should also be an invitation. And so the reader should come away from this feeling like they are invited to know who you are, to get to know you. They should feel welcomed and like they got a kind of a warm sense of who you are as a person. And since I would say that in a lot of scholarship applications, it's kind of this, or it can be a kind of more far away look at who you are. It might feel impersonal at times as they're reading through so many. And so the idea of the personal statement is that it is personal and it bridges that distance that might appear to exist between you and the reader. It's also inherently and essentially an indication of what your priorities and your judgments are. What you choose to say or to not say within your statement tells the committee a lot, right? Because you have such a short amount of space and you intentionally, if you talked about a certain time of your life or a story or a moment, it's telling them that it's really important to who you are and what you believe, right? And so that's really crucial as well. And then finally, a personal statement is a story, or more precisely, your story. I think that a lot of people may think that they don't have anything interesting to say or that it's just a jumble. And so talking with your family and friends, thinking about what your priorities are, reflecting on who you are, what you believe, what you value, that can be a really helpful process in thinking about what anecdotes that you might share in order to make this a coherent story, how you might show, kind of tell your story in a compelling and a really interesting way. And so through this process, I think it's important to think about these different aspects of what a personal statement is. It's a picture, it's a snapshot, an invitation, a story, and to go about it thinking really intentionally in that way. All right, in terms of why you might need to write one, if you're working with our office, you're almost certainly going to be writing some form of a personal statement. And so if you want to be applying to any of the scholarships or fellowships that I mentioned previously, Fulbright, Gilman, CLS, Marshall, et cetera, you will likely be writing one. Also for graduate school, you often need to write a personal statement. If you're applying to a postgraduate service or employment opportunity, you might need to write one. If you're just a really creative, reflective person and you want to be doing this for your own personal development, that is more than encouraged. And then it's also a process that you can be working on, throughout an era of your life, throughout your entire life. And so even just creating a document for yourself that can be updated for future uses is really wonderful as well. And kind of what that hints at is I do think that this is a really valuable process, even if you're not directly applying to something right now. Taking the time to sit down, reflect on who you are, what your values are, what your goals are, what problems you want to solve. That's a really important and reflective process that's going to give you a lot of insight that you might not otherwise be aware of. I think especially with the pace of life that happens in in colleges and universities, this isn't something that we often take the time to do. And so it's kind of a really personally beneficial process for a lot of people, I think, even if it's also hopefully benefiting you professionally or academically. This is also an opportunity to practice reflecting on what your core truths are, on what your core values are, thinking about, that direction that you're trying to get yourself in, and how to do that, importantly, in a really compelling and concise manner. I think that's one of the hardest parts that takes a lot of time and is the reason that we're writing so many drafts often. It's also a really, really great opportunity to improve your writing skills, both kind of more generally, right, like using varied sentence structure and writing concisely. But it's also an opportunity to practice writing a really specific set of writing skills. I know that when I went into my own personal statement process, I was, I would say, under the impression that personal statements should be kind of scientific and really formal, and that the longer the sentence, the better, and the more fancy the word, the better. And I came away from that experience more fully understanding the power of anecdote, the power of figuring out ways to let the reader understand who you are, the power of really concise writing and not trying to spell everything out, but leave some things unsaid and saying them in more interesting ways. And so that's a really valuable experience in and of itself as well. And then finally, you'll be able to use these skills for the rest of your life on job applications, on other scholarship applications, within your personal writing, whatever it may be. Those skills are really transferable and helpful as well. All right. So with that being said, we're going to jump into an activity. After that activity, we'll have a little discussion, and then we'll also, I'll be sharing a little bit of more information after that as well. But this activity I really love. I think it's really fun and helpful. It's called a 6-word memoir. This comes from an idea within Smith Magazine, and its kind of motto is "One life, 6 words, what's yours?" So what this activity is you will be writing, as you would guess, a short 6-word memoir. The objective of this is that you're going to have to be making decisions around what your core values are, what your core beliefs are, and how you can be conveying that to an external audience who doesn't know you within 6 short words. Another idea or intention of this activity is that within a personal statement, you're going to be doing the same thing in a slightly less focused way. 1 page is still quite short. And so if you can write who you are and get somebody to know you within 6 words, then you can absolutely do it within 1 page. And so questions that I want you to be considering as you're doing this, and I'll give you a resource in just a second, but those are kind of, what do you believe? What personal truths guide your most important decisions? And what personal truths also guide your everyday decisions and interactions? So I'm going to grab a link and share it in the chat. So what I would like us to do is take probably about 10 minutes. The link that I put in the chat is to a Padlet, which is essentially a whiteboard that you can be using to post your final 6-word memoir. It's anonymous. You're welcome to put your name at the end if you want to. You're welcome to keep it anonymous. But I'd like us all to just engage in this activity of reflection, thinking about how you can be conveying your core truth, your core belief in a coherent manner, and then posting it on that board. So I'm gonna mute myself for a little bit. If there's any questions, feel free to unmute and ask or put them in a chat. And I'm really excited to see what we end up with. All right. One more thing that I wanted to mention, Lan, if you go to the next slide, really briefly, I have a couple examples in case those are helpful to people. So here's just 4 short examples. Thriving from niche behind the waterfall, searching for meaning, stumbling across life, fighting for what my parents couldn't, and analytical empath, am I an oxymoron? So you can go any direction that you want with this activity. And Leanne, yeah, I'll have you now show the Padlet if you could. All right, I think I see about as many responses as people. So feel free to continue taking a minute or two to finish up. But thank you all so much for engaging in that activity. These are all amazing. I'm just going to read out a couple that I see. Cultural diversity, you matter to me. Many interests, why not pursue them all? Making our work lives meaningful. Hidden passions, quiet thoughts, many responsibilities. Yes, I love it. Would anyone, I'm going to put us in breakout rooms in just a second, but is anyone moved to kind of share what their 6-word memoir is and why they chose that? Yes, Richard.
I guess I was kind of thinking of everything that's going on in Israel and Palestine, and then my own culture and my daughter, who is Jewish, Nicaraguan, American, and just, diversity. It's really important to me. And keeping that around is really important to me as well.
Thank you. Yeah, Jen.
So I'll share. So I'm a midlife career changer, and my plan is to go to grad school in organizational psychology. So I actually put in two, saving the world from bad workplaces and making our work lives meaningful. So that's sort of why I'm here going back to school at midlife, to reduce all those bad workplaces.
I love that. All right, well, I wanted to give people a chance to share to the whole group, but you'll have a chance to do that in your breakout rooms. So we're going to put you in, kind of randomly assign you to breakout rooms for just about 5 minutes, maybe a couple more. Welcome back, everyone. We'll wait till everyone's back. How are your chats?
It was pretty good. We shared our 6 words and then kind of just discussed about how it was kind of hard to obviously do it in 6 words, but it's interesting seeing how you can make it pretty general and then kind of interpret a bunch of meanings out of the 6 words to relate to your life. So
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's definitely the challenge, is some people might come away with different things because it is so concise.
mhm.
But I think that's also a strength in many ways of having those different interpretations. Welcome back, everyone. Are we all here? I think so. Thanks, Leanne. All right, welcome back. I hope that you had some good, quick conversations about how that process went for you, what you learned about yourself, maybe, hopefully, in writing a short 6-word memoir. Great, and we have the screen back up. All righty, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about some additional tips that I have for you all for writing personal statements. And then I think we'll go into another little discussion as well. Let me bring my screen up again. Here we go. All righty, so as you saw in hopefully that activity, writing or kind of reflecting on who you are, what you want to share, and how you're going to do it can be hard. It can take some work. So before even getting involved within that process, I recommend doing a lot of homework about, and this is specifically if you're applying to something, graduate school, scholarship application, fellowship, doing homework on what that scholarship or fellowship or foundation's goals, missions are, what maybe a typical scholar might look like, although for many of the scholarships that we work with, there are no typical scholars, which is really great. What the selection criteria are, what different application components are, getting a good sense of what that scholarship is looking for can be extremely helpful. Primarily as you're deciding if it's really in alignment with who you are and what you're trying to do. We never recommend that people are artificial within their statement of grant purposes. So during that process of doing your homework, you might decide that you really aren't in alignment with what that scholarship or fellowship is trying to do. And that's important to know and can save you a lot of time as well. I also find it extremely helpful to talk with a previous scholar if you can. So for example, when I was applying to my own Fulbright ETA, I drew on the generosity of many, many previous Fulbrighters or scholars, different people, and did a little informational interview with them to figure out what their experiences applying were, what their experiences doing the scholarship or fellowship were, to get a better sense of what I might be writing about within my personal statement. And then, as I mentioned, the best candidates are often those who are in alignment with whatever the scholarship or foundation has a mission to do. A next step is reflecting a lot upon that common thread that hopefully you were able to weave through your 6-word memoir. So what you can do is start assessing and reflecting upon your experiences, your skills, your goals, your values, and as you're doing that, and I'm going to give you an activity later today to start to do that, you can be reflecting on like what keeps showing up, what do you keep seeing throughout your experiences and your skills. What's that singular problem or issue that keeps arising? And that can really help you clarify the direction in your career that you're trying to take, the direction that you might take this essay, and it can reveal what steps you should do to reach those goals. And so I always recommend do not, when you're writing a personal statement, just sit down and try to write your final copy. You're going to want to be doing a lot of reflection before getting to that point to even decide what to include in your essay. Next screen. After you've done your homework and you've reflected, you can start to share your story, to think about exactly what you're going to say and how you're going to say it. So you'll need to make a lot of really intentional and often hard decisions. You might have found while writing your 6-word memoir, it can be hard to decide what to include, but make those decisions about what details you're going to share in order to be coherent and concise in conveying your core truth. And what you're going to be doing within this stage is really deciding, like, what do I want the readers to know? What do I want to highlight? What do I want them to walk away from this experience with? Knowing that they don't know who you are, and so you're going to have to be conveying a couple different points that hopefully show up in a coherent manner, rather than trying to show everything that you are, because that's impossible within a 1 to 2 page document. And then the final step here is to make it interesting. So you could have an incredibly interesting life history, interesting problem you're going to want to solve, but if you can't convey that in a way that's coherent to an external person who knows nothing about you, then you're not going to be effective with your statement. And so you're going to be thinking about how you want to share this, if you're going to be using stories, if you're going to be using specific anecdotal moments in your life that were transformational for you. You're going to be wanting to decide if there's like a hook that you want to start with in order to bring the reader in. Often sharing kind of these sensory details or letting the reader get into a specific moment in your life can be really effective. That can be that, showing versus telling strategy that you can be using. But these are things that often you'll be working on as you write different drafts of your personal statement. And Leanne and I are happy within our office to be working with you throughout that process as well. All righty. So I think, we will have time for this. So we're going to go into breakout rooms. Once again, they'll be automatic and random again. So I imagine that you might be working with different people. But what I'd like you to do is be thinking about some of these questions. So I'll read them out first. What common thread unites your values, interests, goals, and experiences? These could be showing up within your employment opportunities, within your extracurriculars, etc. Another way to kind of think about that question is, what 3 things would you want a reader of your personal statement to come away with? And then finally, what activities or experiences have you done that could provide evidence for that common thread? So these are a couple things I want you to be thinking about. I'm going to put you in breakout rooms. I'm also going to put these questions in the chat so that you have them. And then we will come back. I'll share a couple additional resources that are super helpful, and then we'll have time for questions. Wait till you're all back. I think so. Woohoo! All right. Well, I hope you had some good breakout rooms. We're able to talk with some folks, get some different understandings on what people are thinking about bringing to their personal statements. I just have a final slide here, and then I'm hoping that we can have some time for questions if people have ones individual to scholarships, fellowships that they're thinking of applying to, or more general to personal statements as well. So for next steps, what I recommend are first in the chat, which I always struggle putting documents in, so we'll see how this goes. I'm going to put in 2 documents, one of which is a PDF and one of which is a Word, just in case people have different accessibility issues it should be going through now. That's a document that I've created and which is adapted from a document that's actually created for UDAL, which is one scholarship we work with, but it's a really cool, helpful guide that brings you through writing a personal statement over the course of 14 days. And you really only write the statement, I think, like day 11 to 13. And before that, you're just doing some different reflection activities that are going to help you to bring this jumble that is your life into something more coherent. So if you're interested, I really encourage you to work with that activity. It's quite fun. And let me know and reach out by email if for some reason you have trouble accessing. Another really helpful thing you can do is ask to read previous successful personal statements, if possible. And so if you're working with one of the scholarships in our office, we often have access to some sample applications. If you know someone who applied to something and you want to reach out, that's a great way to do it as well. But getting some ideas of what people are doing and how they're doing it can be really helpful. Don't stop reflecting. This is a lifelong process. And so your goals and your experiences and your skills are going to be changing constantly over time. And so continue reassessing what those look like for you and what you want them to look like within your personal statement. And then finally, practice, practice, practice. It's not always fun, but writing multiple drafts of these essays is a really helpful process. Talk to any author ever. We actually have a really helpful document that's posted on our website that's called Shitty First Drafts. And it's kind of an ode to the first draft that's just really terrible, but it helps you get somewhere. So look for that on our website as well. But just know that that's not anything against your person. If your first draft is horrible, that just means that you're getting somewhere and you have somewhere to start. And then, Leanne, I think on the next slide is some contact information, just in case anyone wants that. We have links to both my and Leanne's emails, our Instagram again, the website. And then if you want to schedule an advising appointment with either of us, you can use that link. That's also on our website as well. So I would love if people have questions or things they want to discuss, really anything. This is a great time to do it. So feel free to put anything in the chat or to unmute and ask a question, and we'd love to start a discussion or answer it. And Leanne, can you show the previous slide? Oh, there you go. Great. Jen?
A question. Does your office also provide consultation or advice or assistance on applying for the NSF Graduate Research Fellowship Program?
Yeah, so that is something that right now we do not have capacity for, but that's our next priority if we're ever to gain more funding. And so we're hoping to be able to do that in the future. But right now we are not able to. Anything to add on to that, Leanne?
I would just add that it is a high priority. It's something that I think we really need to offer at OSU. We just have limited capacity with just the 2 of us, and Ashley's half time. But that being said, if you are working on something else with us, like Fulbright, for example, that makes it a lot easier for us to kind of counsel you on both. And NSFG RFP is something that I'm really working on getting to know better right now. So that could be a learning opportunity for me. So I would say maybe schedule an appointment and let's talk about what your interests are and see what we can do to help you.
Cool, thanks.
Other questions?
So for the to get the most out of everything, how often would you recommend making an appointment to chat? Like, let's say you have the initial interview, you figure out where you want to, apply. How often should you be checking in?
Yeah, that is totally up to you and kind of your working style. And if you're somebody who needs more structure, less structure, we're happy to meet with people weekly, maybe even bi-weekly, every 2 times a week if you want to. I would say that for some scholarships like Fulbright, it's more common for candidates to be meeting with us weekly for longer periods of time. And so definitely do that if that's of use to you and you find yourself coming up with new questions every week or having new drafts. But other people, some people never meet with us. Some people meet monthly or bi-weekly. So yeah, if you are going to find it helpful to be meeting with us every week to keep yourself on track, that's great. We're happy to do that.
Thanks.
Great question.
It's helpful to think about what you need to hold yourself accountable. Like if you know you have an appointment coming up and that will really prompt you to get that essay draft written, that's one way to think about it. And so you can set those milestones for yourself and then create appointments that correspond with those. So that's one way to think about it. Would anyone care to introduce themselves and talk about what they're thinking of applying for?
I can go, Leanne. It's
Sure.
Jane.
Hi, Jane.
Hi, guys. I've started with the National and Global Scholarships Advising to apply for the Gilman Scholarship for study abroad. And throughout that application process, Leanne and Ashley supported me by helping me with my essays, sort of helping me to kind of figure out what I was trying to say and maybe make that point in a more articulate or concise way. And I think that really, really helped me to advance with that scholarship. And I have currently begun the process of applying to Fulbright, also with the pretty heavy support and help from Leanne and Ashley. So I guess I would just encourage anyone here that's kind of on the fence about applying or looking into these scholarships to make an appointment and look into it, because I never would have thought that I might be a candidate for Fulbright until I talked to Leanne about it. So if anyone has interest, you should definitely reach out and ask and see what things just are different than you might think they are. So that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane.
Someone asked if we're available during the summer, and the answer is yes, we are. We're happy to work with you over the summer. A lot of our deadlines are in the fall, so summer is actually a really critical time for us. And also, if you're, as someone mentioned, if you're on the fence, another thing you can do is just meet with us. You don't have to know what you want to apply for to set a meeting. We appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and get to know you and ask you what your interests are and then match you with opportunities that we're aware of.
Any final questions or thoughts?
A question?
Yeah.
So the Fulbright right now is for what school year? Because it's like 2 years or something in ahead of time. How does that work?
Sorry, I missed what opportunity you mentioned.
So like when you apply for Fulbright and if you get it, when you would actually start school.
Yeah, so you would apply and sending your application into us at the end of August, for example, 2021, submitting the final application October 2021, and then you'd be leaving anywhere from September or July of the following year. And then Lan, if they're in the
Southern
the Western
Hemisphere.
Hemisphere or it
Yeah,
depends, like if you're in Chile, would it be a little bit later?
it would be, yeah. For most applicants, the start date would be in the fall of 2022. So the
Mhm.
academic year is 22-23 for the current application cycle. But like Ashley said, it's for countries in the Southern Hemisphere, the start date could be in February of 2023.
So you're often leaving a full year or even more after you submit your final application.
Okay. Groovy. So applying for, say, Fulbright next spring would be starting the following fall-ish.
Yes, the following is in the next calendar year. Yes.
Groovy. Depending on where the school is. Cool. Thank you very much.
The deadline will always be in the fall, though. It's always in October. The national deadline is always in October. And then our campus deadline is a month to 2 months before that. And that's because we do a lot of back and forth interviewing and reviewing your application. We bring in faculty who help give feedback, and we provide an endorsement for your application for Fulbright. And so all that process takes time, and it helps you turn in the best possible application for the national deadline.
And they have like a rolling acceptance or whatever. So like they're already sending out acceptance letters now, even though, like I read somewhere that people are already hearing if they are going to the next round or whatever.
Yes.
That was for the previous year for people who applied last fall.
Oh.
They find out now if they're going this coming fall.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a delayed process.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was like, wow, they're on top of it. Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, unless there's any final questions, thank you all so much for coming. I hope you can get outside for a little bit after this meeting. And as Lan mentioned, we super encourage you to reach out to us, set up an appointment, email us, however you want to get in contact. And we're happy to just chat, even if you're not sure what you're going to apply to. All right. Well, thank you so much. I'll stick around if anyone has any questions, but have a good rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.